Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. You might be able to hear from my voice that I am a little bit ill, but nevertheless I am ready to do this video. I really wanted to do this today, so here we are talking about something that I normally don't like drawing attention to, which are some books that I didn't really like. I mean, some of them I liked, but they disappointed me anyway. And I'm going to go through some of those titles today that I read in 2018 and which didn't really pleasure me, which didn't really satisfy the need that I was having. I have a stack of books here, but I think I'm going to start with the ones that are not physical, which I don't own a physical copy of. First one being Children of Blood and Bone by Tony Adeyemi. This was the highlight of 2018. It was one of the most popular young adult fantasy releases this year, and I was drawn to the hype. I wanted to participate, I wanted to read the book and see if I liked it. And if you follow my channel, you will know that I didn't make it through the book. I made it about 100 pages in, maybe 150, but it just wasn't a book for me, which is fine. I'm just frustrated that I let the hype get to me and I bought this book, which I didn't really find that intriguing at all. I found it to be silly. The premise was just not interesting enough to drag me in, and I knew that it was going to be a series of many books, so I was not going to invest my time finishing this book and continuing on with this series. I knew that already from the beginning, so that was a no-go to me. Another book I got rid of pretty quickly is a classic by Cormac McCarthy. I know that he is a very popular author, but I did not like All the Pretty Horses, which is the first book in the trilogy. I think that it was both the writing, which is very unique for Cormac, but also the story, which just didn't drag me in at all. I had a hard time finishing this book. I remember being into it in the beginning, but then it went slowly downhill, and towards the end I just wanted to get it over with. I was surprised that I didn't like this book more than I did. And I'm actually now put off to read any more books by Cormac McCarthy because that's how much that book disappointed me. I just felt like it played with some very generic themes and topics, that it was trying to be a grand novel and a grand story, which I just didn't buy. I didn't like it, and it was just not a story for me, which is fine. As I said, I'm just pretty surprised about this one. And then we have Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. Another great book which I know a lot of people love, and I have been getting comments on my Goodreads review that I misunderstood this book and this is why I didn't like it, which might be it. But the thing is that the humor of this book did not fall to my liking, and the story in itself felt very silly to me. And then the main thing is that the message of this book was just plain stupid. I did not care for the fact that rich people got to behave this way, that it was like idolized how rich people live, and it was funny to read about them. I didn't find it funny at all. I just found it pretty, I don't know if generic is the correct word, but another book that I know that a lot of people love, but I just didn't like it. I think I am going to watch the movie after all, because I think this story might work better as a film. But we will have to wait and see. I still haven't watched it, but I might do that sooner or later. And then we also have John Green's Turtles All the Way Down. So with this book, I felt like the premise was plain stupid. I did not care for the chase that we have in the book. I did not really care for the characters. The only thing that really grabbed me was the disease that our main character has, which is that she is compulsive. I think she has OCD, but I might be mistaken. She also has anxiety, and that part was definitely interesting to read about. Being inside her head and experiencing the world from her perspective was interesting, but the premise in itself was just silly, and that turtle that the whole book is based upon, I did not really get, and I did not really care for. So not a book for me, and not a book that I am going to share with other people. I was hoping that I would be able to read it with my students, but I don't see that happening just because I didn't really like it myself. So now on to the physical books I have on my shelves. I do plan on getting rid of these at some point, but for now I still own them. And the first one is Tin Man by Sarah Winman. This book was okay. It was a 3-star read for me, so it wasn't bad at all. It was definitely interesting, but I think that once again the hype got to me, and I still don't understand why so many people find this story absolutely beautiful and impeccable, because I just found it ordinary and interesting enough, but not the most amazing thing I've ever read. But it's about the gay community and something to do with love, obviously, but also with women and growing up. And that's all I really remember. So it wasn't a very impressionable story, as you can hear from me. And it was just an okay read, which is definitely something I would recommend, but it's not my favorite of the year, that's for sure. The next book, I should have predicted that it would not be one of the best reads of this year, but nevertheless I decided to buy and read Save the Date by Morgan Matson, which was also released this year. I even got a signed first edition, because I think all first editions are signed. Anyway, I found this book to be, well, it read like a comedy in the movies, and I don't care for comedies, so that was one of my main problems with this book. It felt like the plot was pushed forward with unimaginable and unbelievable things that kept happening to our protagonist, which made it seem silly, it made it seem, as I said, unbelievable, and I just did not care for this book. I mean, it was a fun read, but it was not a deep read, that's for sure. And I was a bit disappointed that it was more of a comedy than it was more of a serious story, which I know that we get from some of the other books that Morgan Matson has written. Another classic which didn't fall to my liking is The Dot Avocado by Elaine Dundee. I actually didn't even finish this book. I think I made it about halfway and then I gave up, because this book was just pure vagueness. It was not clear to me what it was really about. It was a long ramble on life. It's about this young girl who is pretty dot, and I just don't really know how to describe this book other than saying that it was not that mind-blowing. It was not something that stuck to my mind, and as I said, I couldn't even finish it, so that was a shame, because I do have this stunning edition, but that was not enough to make me keep on reading. And then one of the books that I was looking the most forward to when I heard that it was coming out this year was also a book that disappointed me a little bit. It's another one of those books that was okay, but it was just a 3-star read for me, and that is Robert Galbraith's Lethal White, the 4th book in the Cormoran Strike series, a detective series which is also very much about the 2 main characters called Strike and Robin, and those 2 characters I love, and those are the ones that made me keep on reading. But in this book, these 2 characters made the dumbest decisions that just ruined the book for me, and the whole plot was based on these bad decisions. So not a book for me, and it was very long as well. I ended up reading it just for the sake of finishing it. So not a book that blew my mind. I had my hopes high for this one, but it turned out to disappoint me, and as I said, I only gave this one 3 stars. I'm not even sure I'm going to continue reading this series. I think with the next book I will wait and see what other people say, and then if they really like it, I might continue on, but for now I'm just not really into that series. Then we have Sarah Waters' The Paying Guests. Now this is a clear example, a typical example of a book by Sarah Waters, which is great to begin with, but then as we move towards the ending, I lose hope and I lose my fascination for the plot and the characters and the story in itself, because this is another one of those books that ended really badly. It did not fit with the whole story, and it was not a realistic ending, and it just fell flat for me, and I ended up giving it 2 stars because of that ending. But to be fair, it was also because of the middle part, which is pretty slow going, and I had to put this book down for a few weeks in order to get over that bump in the road, and then that ending was just disappointing. So all in all, this was a 2-star read for me. It starts out great, but it ends, as I said, badly, and it's about 2 women who are living in this house, and they have some interesting paying guests living above them whose lives become parts of their lives. Another very popular book this year, which was also published this year and which everyone seems to have been reading. However, with this book, it seems like a lot of people agree with me that it starts out strong and it's a great read to begin with, but then it goes slowly downhill, and it's one of those books that I also couldn't finish. I'm talking about The Puppy War by R.F. Kuang. Yeah, this book was just interesting because, as I said, the beginning was a 5-star read for me. We are at this academy with our protagonist, who is a young girl who is trained to be a warrior in Asia somewhere. It's a fantasy book, so it's hard to pinpoint exactly where we are. But then the book turns into something completely different. It's about war, well, as you can tell from the title, and I lost interest so much so that I put down the book a little bit more than halfway through it, and I do not regret it. I don't think this is going to be a series for me, but it was interesting to dip my toes into it and see what it was all about. But as so many other people, I think that this book was interesting but not worth reading or finishing, unfortunately. That leads me to the very last book in my bunch of disappointing books this year, and that is The Summer Wives by Beatrix Williams. This one I knew while I was reading that it was not going to be a book for me, but for some reason I was determined to finish it because I felt like I was in a period of time in which I had given up on quite some books, so this one I wanted to finish. That being said, now that I have read it, I know that I was right from the beginning. This was not a book for me, and I kind of knew where things were going with this one, which is not a good sign. I hate for my books to be predictable. This is set up as a kind of a detective mysterious thriller, which is set on an island, so it's very isolated from the rest of the world. And then we have our main character, who is this very famous movie star who returns to the island, and we know that she is very nervous about returning because something bad happened there when she was a child. I'm not going to say anything else, but this one is another one I gave 2 stars. It was okay to read, but definitely not one of my favorite books of this year, that's for sure. So that is it for all of the books that disappointed me this year, and which, yeah, I wanted to share with you. Maybe you got something out of this or not. Maybe I talked about some books that you loved, which I hope you can understand that we all have different reading tastes, so don't take it personal at all. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and until my next one, happy reading.